Excellency Mr. Bouaké Fofana. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged this afternoon, as part of this program, to have His Excellency the Minister to provide a keynote address as part of our dialogue, part of our roundtable. I'd like us to allow the Honorable Minister to deliver his keynote address, which will, give us further areas of consideration and thought in our deliberations around financing water in Africa. Monsieur le Ministre, vous avez la parole. Merci.
Okay. Merci beaucoup, modérateur. Je voudrais commencer en tout cas par vous saluer tous. Je sais que nous sommes en fin d'après-midi et que vous avez eu des journées longues. Je voudrais remercier en tout cas l'OCDE et la Banque africaine de développement pour m'avoir invité à participer à cette session. Donc j'ai été invité pour parler de financement de l'eau. J'imagine donc en ma qualité de ministre en charge de l'hydraulique et de l'assainissement en Côte d'Ivoire. Et vous avez donc, en m'invitant, pris le risque de faire venir quelqu'un, un béotien en matière d'eau potable, en matière d'assainissement et de salubrité, pour venir parler à des exégètes, à des experts en matière d'eau et en matière de financement de l'eau. C'est pour cela que, quand on m'a invité, j'ai réfléchi sous quel angle je devais aborder ma présentation. Je ne voulais pas non plus vous ennuyer, puisque je sais que vous êtes tous des experts en la matière, que ça fait 2 jours que vous en parlez, mais ça fait quand même 10 ans que vous en parlez sous ce format dans plusieurs pays. Alors, et donc la question que je me suis posée, comment ne pas vous ennuyer le moins possible dans ma présentation, et voilà l'angle sur lequel j'aborde la question. Alors, je suis ici invité par l'OCDE, par la BAD, et je pense que dans la salle, il y a une communauté de partenaires techniques et financiers. Je reconnais quelques visages. Et donc, moi, en tant que ministre en charge de l'eau et de l'assainissement, quand je vais à une tribune où il y a l'audience est composée des partenaires techniques et financiers, c'est de développer un plaidoyer en faveur du financement de l'eau. Nous avons besoin de beaucoup de financement. Et je voudrais, en tout cas, que les partenaires techniques et financiers, avec nous, on se met d'accord sur quelques points en matière de financement de l'eau. Nous avons, nous, en tant qu'utilisateurs de vos services, je crois, déployé toutes sortes de plaidoyers, de justificatifs, pourquoi il faut des financements importants pour le secteur de l'eau. Il faut qu'on convienne ensemble que le tarif auquel nous produisons l'eau aujourd'hui, ce tarif ne pourra pas, enfin, le tarif que nous facturons aux consommateurs, et en particulier les consommateurs les plus vulnérables, ne pourra jamais servir à couvrir le coût de production de l'eau. Ce coût de production augmente de jour en jour. Les ressources se raréfient. En Côte d'Ivoire, par exemple, pendant longtemps, on n'avait que de l'eau souterraine. Aujourd'hui, on fait de plus en plus appel à des eaux de surface qui posent d'autres problèmes. Et donc, l'eau, aujourd'hui, coûte de plus en plus cher à produire. Or, le tarif que nous avons, comme il s'agit d'un secteur social, nous avons du mal à aligner le tarif sur le coût de production. Donc, nous devons tous nous mettre d'accord que ce n'est pas sur le tarif c'est pas le tarif qu'on facture aujourd'hui qui va permettre de financer le coût de production de l'eau, le coût de sa distribution, le coût de son stockage. Ça me paraît être un point important. L'autre point important, c'est de dire, bon, tout le monde reconnaît que l'eau et l'assainissement, c'est un secteur social de base, il faut en tenir compte. C'est un secteur dans lequel le tarif est un tarif qui est, je ne sais pas comment on dit le terme français, price discrimination. On a une tarification discriminante, je dirais, de l'eau, de sorte qu'on a un tarif social, un tarif domestique, un tarif industriel et tout cela. C'est de voir comment on regarde. Parce que pour les politiques, il est difficile aujourd'hui, le cas de la Côte d'Ivoire. L'État aujourd'hui, par la force des choses, subventionne l'électricité, subventionne le prix de l'eau potable, puisque depuis 2004, le tarif en Côte d'Ivoire de l'eau n'a pas bougé. Et donc, l'État subventionne aujourd'hui le prix du pain à travers la subvention sur le blé, subventionne les carburants et tout cela, subventionne donc indirectement l'eau aujourd'hui. Il faut qu'on prenne conscience de cela. Nous avons besoin que les partenaires techniques et financiers et nous-mêmes, que le secteur privé, on explore d'autres méthodes, des méthodes innovantes de financement de l'eau. C'est pour cela que dans ma présentation, je ne vais pas vous ennuyer avec les méthodes de financement parce que vous les connaissez mieux que moi. Je me suis dit comment je pose le terme du débat parce qu'on a fait tous les plaidoyers possibles. Pourquoi on a besoin de plus de financement dans le secteur de l'eau et de l'assainissement. Alors, dans mes recherches, je suis tombé sur quelqu'un qui n'est pas un spécialiste de l'eau et qui a posé là une problématique qui me paraît vraiment embrasser la situation qu'on a aujourd'hui de l'eau. Ça peut être peut-être un argument supplémentaire pour les partenaires techniques et financiers pour comprendre pourquoi il faut financer l'eau et pourquoi il faut le financer peut-être un peu mieux, un peu plus que d'autres secteurs avec lesquels on compétit pour les financements. Et c'est l'académicien français Éric Orsena qui a dit dans un livre qu'il a écrit, qui s'appelle L'avenir de l'eau, il a écrit en 2008. Il pose la question, dans 10 ans, en 2008, il disait dans 10 ans, donc le délai est déjà passé, nous sommes en 2023, il disait dans 10 ans, dans 20 ans, aurons-nous assez d'eau? Assez d'eau pour boire, assez d'eau pour faire pousser les plantes, assez d'eau pour éviter qu'à toutes les raisons de faire la guerre s'ajoute celle du manque d'eau. Pour moi, c'est vraiment l'argumentaire que je veux dire, en plus de tous les arguments classiques. Pourquoi il faut de l'argent? Il faut des financements. Financement traditionnel, financement innovant dans le secteur de l'eau. Comment le secteur privé peut venir? Troisième question, est-ce que nous aurons assez d'eau pour éviter qu'à toutes les raisons, bonnes et mauvaises, de faire la guerre qui existe déjà, on ne vienne ajouter une autre raison qui est celle du manque d'eau. Mesdames et messieurs, en tout cas, nos partenaires de la BAD, de la Banque mondiale, tous les partenaires techniques et financiers, travaillons ensemble pour que nous n'ayons pas, dans 10, enfin il a dit dans 10 ans, on est déjà en 2023, dans 20 ans, dans 30 ans, on a affaire à des guerres de l'eau. On a exploré toutes les voies possibles. Aujourd'hui, en Côte d'Ivoire, nous avons un fermier. Nous sommes parmi les premiers pays africains à faire gérer l'eau par le secteur privé à travers notre fermier historique, la SODECI, depuis 1959, donc même avant l'indépendance. Nous avons continué. Ce fermier est toujours là. L'État a mis en place un fonds de développement de l'eau, un fonds national de l'eau, pour faire face au financement du secteur. Il a subventionné. Nous commençons à voir venir du privé, mais seulement pour construire des usines de production. Nous souhaitons aller vers de vrais partenariats publics et privés, avoir de vrais producteurs indépendants, des opérateurs qui viendraient, qui feront leur analyse économique et financière de la Côte d'Ivoire, vont construire des usines de production d'eau, pourquoi pas des ouvrages de stockage, de transport, tout ce qu'on veut. Et l'État va leur garantir un tarif, enfin un montant, enfin un contrat de l'achat de leur production, mais ils prendront le risque quand même de construire leur usine, de l'exploiter, et puis nous discuterons, nous, État, dans le cadre de vrais partenariats publics et privés, voir comment, enfin sur quelle durée, on signe ces contrats d'achat de production. Voilà, Donc, mesdames et messieurs, je vais m'arrêter là pour qu'on ait beaucoup de temps, si débat il y a, pour discuter. Je répète encore, je prends à mon compte la question d'Éric Orsena. Est-ce que nous aurons assez d'eau pour éviter qu'aux raisons de faire la guerre vienne s'ajouter la guerre due au manque d'eau? Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Ministre, pour cette intervention très intéressante. Vous avez évoqué un point qui est central dans les discussions qu'on a ici pendant ces 2 jours, c'est la valeur de l'eau. Donc, on sait que la valeur n'est pas le prix. Voilà, et qu'il y a un coût social exorbitant pour un prix de l'eau faible. Parce que le prix ne reflète pas vraiment la valeur de l'eau de manière générale. Vous avez donné un exemple très éclairant pour nous ici dans la salle, c'est ce travail de terrain sur le financement des projets d'infrastructure de l'eau pour rendre l'eau disponible à tout le monde au juste prix. Quand on dit juste prix, ça ne veut pas dire nécessairement subventionné ou hyper subventionné, parce qu'on sait très bien, Monsieur le Ministre, quand c'est très subventionné, ça n'implique pas un usage rationnel, parce que c'est la gratuité qui pose problème ici. Et vous avez parlé de l'engagement de votre gouvernement pour un partenariat public-privé. Donc ça exactement, c'est le sujet, on a débattu toute la journée et on continuera demain. S'il n'y a pas de questions dans la salle, j'aimerais bien, moi, vous poser la question, la première, c'est quelles sont les difficultés que vous aperceviez dans votre mandat, votre travail au quotidien sur ce partenariat public-privé?
Les difficultés pour nous, c'est les mêmes. Aujourd'hui, j'ai l'exemple de cas de partenariat public-privé. Mais pour moi, ce ne sont pas de vrais partenariats, ce ne sont pas des partenariats complets. On a aujourd'hui une usine qui est en fonctionnement en Côte d'Ivoire, une usine de production de 240 000 mètres cubes d'eau par jour, qui construit donc par un opérateur privé et qui livre cette eau aux fermiers traditionnels. Alors, le simple fait d'avoir déjà des producteurs qui nous envoient de l'eau dans le réseau du fermier, ça pose d'autres problèmes, notamment de régulation du secteur de l'eau. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, si nous avions un problème de contamination, par exemple, de l'eau, on aurait du mal à dire qui en est responsable entre le fermier, qui lui-même produit également de l'eau, et le producteur indépendant. Et le problème, notre approche, c'est de régler un peu, de nous inspirer du secteur de l'électricité, où il y a un régulateur. Et comme pour des raisons économiques, la tendance en Côte d'Ivoire aujourd'hui, ce n'est pas de créer de nouvelles structures. On va peut-être, au sein de la structure de régulation du secteur de l'électricité, peut-être ajouter un département eau potable pour éviter d'avoir... voilà, pour rationaliser un peu notre approche. Donc, ça c'est la première chose. La difficulté que nous avons, c'est que, comme on dit, à partir du moment où le tarif ne couvre pas le coût de production, c'est la question comment on traite les cas des tarifs. Entre le coût de revient de l'eau, le coût de production de l'eau, sa distribution, et le tarif qui est pratiqué aujourd'hui. Et comme ce tarif a plusieurs tiroirs, on convient avec le gouvernement ne souhaite pas toucher aux populations les plus vulnérables, en tout cas, pas dans l'absolu, mais en tout cas, ces couches-là ne peuvent pas suivre l'augmentation du coût de production. Probablement, pour nous, c'est à peu près les 18 premiers mètres cubes d'eau qui sont au tarif social. Peut-être ces gens-là, les personnes qui sont à ce tarif-là, les épargner, et voir comment les autres couches sociales peuvent supporter une partie de l'écart de coût. C'est important. Mais à la fin de la journée, je pense qu'on ne pourra pas échapper au subventionnement. Et là, c'est en milieu urbain. En milieu rural, la question se pose différemment. En Côte d'Ivoire, aujourd'hui, l'eau servie en milieu urbain est facturée par le fermier. Par contre, l'eau en milieu rural est donnée gratuitement, en guillemets. Parce que quand on a des pompes à motricité humaine ou de l'hydraulique villageoise améliorée, il y a des comités de gestion et les consommateurs sont censés payer un petit quelque chose pour les frais d'entretien. Donc, nous pensons que la question aujourd'hui, c'est de voir, comme vous l'avez dit, c'est un bien social. Sa valeur est largement plus importante que son coût de facturation ou son coût de production. Il faut qu'on arrive à trouver un modus vivendi avec les partenaires techniques et financiers. Comment on gère cette question-là du subventionnement de l'eau. Alors, nous avons également, avec l'aide justement des partenaires techniques et financiers, BAD, Banque mondiale, AFD, enfin tous les partenaires techniques et financiers, aller vers une gestion intégrée des ressources en eau. Quand on prend un pays comme la Côte d'Ivoire, plus vous montez, plus l'eau de source se fera, donc coûte plus cher à produire, plus vous montez vers le nord. Et les données montrent que la quantité d'eau qui tombe, la pluie qui tombe, si on avait les infrastructures pour recueillir ces eaux, les conserver, les traiter, ensuite les distribuer, ça pourrait réduire, n'est-ce pas, les besoins, couvrir une bonne partie des besoins. Et naturellement, en termes de coût global pour l'économie ivoirienne, pour le gouvernement, ça réduit les coûts. Voilà.
Merci infiniment. On va prendre quelques questions de la salle. Est-ce que quelqu'un... Oui, on a une question au fond. Je ne sais pas si vous pouvez m'aider à... Voilà, merci, monsieur.
Merci beaucoup. Mon nom, c'est juste Herman Nancy. Je travaille pour IRC Watch, je suis le directeur Afrique. Je voudrais remercier monsieur le ministre pour son intervention et son analyse très inspirante. Et je voudrais en profiter pour partager une chose qui ressort de façon assez explicite des échanges que nous avons depuis ce matin. C'est que le problème de financement de l'eau n'est pas un problème d'indisponibilité des ressources financières. Et ça, je pense que c'est un message important parce que cela nous amène tous à changer de discours. Le discours porté par le secteur jusqu'ici qui parle d'insuffisance de financement, il faudra qu'on le change parce que si on n'a pas le bon discours, on n'a pas nécessairement les bonnes solutions. Et je pense que c'est une première chose. Et si le problème n'est pas celui de la disponibilité des ressources financières, l'autre élément qui ressort des échanges que nous avons depuis le matin, c'est que c'est beaucoup plus un problème d'efficience et d'efficacité du secteur. En anglais, en termes simples, j'ai du mal à retrouver la formule française appropriée, c'est un problème de creditworthiness, de solvabilité du secteur. Et je pense que c'est un élément important. Il faudrait qu'on change le discours, qu'on change le langage quand on veut poser le problème de financement du secteur, que c'est plus un problème de solvabilité du secteur qu'un problème d'indisponibilité des ressources. Et nous avons eu l'occasion, nous avons eu la chance de suivre le témoignage d'un pays cet après-midi, le Bénin, qui confirme que à partir de réformes organisationnelles, institutionnelles, juridiques profondes du secteur, le pays est arrivé à mobiliser des ressources colossales et réaliser des investissements importants qui ont permis une accélération en flèche du taux de desserte. Donc, premier élément, j'aimerais savoir, monsieur le ministre, comment vous voyez ce changement de discours? Comment vous vivez cette réalité que la problématique en termes de financement aujourd'hui n'est pas celle d'indisponibilité des ressources, mais plutôt celle de l'attractivité du secteur pour les financements? Je vous remercie.
Merci. Je réponds au fur et à mesure, ou bien on laisse toutes les questions se poser et puis...
On prendra une autre question, comme ça le pipeline ne soit pas très long.
Thank you so much. I'm Engineer Joe Kalusa. I'm a permanent secretary in the Ministry of Water Development and Sanitation in our country, Zambia. My question is, Honorable, thank you so much for the way you have elaborated how I wish I would invite you to my country so that you come and elaborate more. My question is, I want to find out how are you managing as a government to settle the water bills for the government institutions? For example, schools, hospitals, and other government institutions. Are you up to date paying these utility companies, or what is the situation? Thank you.
Merci. Alors, la première question, alors, je suis d'accord avec vous hein, sur un point, c'est que les financements, le stock de financement disponible, oui, il y a du financement. Que la vraie question, c'est l'attractivité du secteur de l'eau. Oui, parce que ça pose le problème de la compétition avec d'autres secteurs. Je prends un exemple simple, deux secteurs qui me paraissent assez proches, le secteur de l'électricité et le secteur de l'eau potable. Quand on regarde les deux secteurs, en tout cas du point de vue des opérateurs privés, le secteur de l'électricité est plus attractif aujourd'hui. Parce que déjà, quand je regarde, si on prend l'eau servie aux populations en général, et l'électricité servie aux populations en général, déjà, moi je prends en Côte d'Ivoire, il y a aussi un aspect psychologique. On considère que l'accès à l'eau est un droit. Et donc un devoir pour les pouvoirs publics de donner l'eau à tout le monde. C'est un devoir. Alors, ce n'est pas forcément le cas de l'électricité ou d'autres biens sur lesquels, avec lesquels on compétit pour les financements. Donc, je suis d'accord qu'il y a des financements disponibles. Il faut pouvoir être attractif en termes de réforme. Vous me direz que si on compare le secteur de l'électricité en Côte d'Ivoire et le secteur de l'eau, le secteur de l'électricité est en avance sur nous en matière de réforme. Nous sommes en train de faire ces réformes-là. Mais toutes ces réformes, quel que soit le bout par lequel on les prend, posent toujours la question clé de l'écart des tarifs. Par exemple, en Côte d'Ivoire, on a réussi récemment à revoir le tarif de l'électricité. Mais l'eau, nous-mêmes, on a du mal à toucher au tarif de l'eau. Par rapport aux conséquences sociales, par rapport à la sensibilité du sujet. Et l'électricité servie au village, aujourd'hui, est payée. N'est-ce pas? Dans un village, ils ont l'éclairage public, mais quand quelqu'un, même dans un village, depuis reculé, s'abonne à l'électricité, il reçoit une facture. Pour l'eau, on considère, à juste raison, qu'on ne peut pas demander à des gens de payer absolument avant d'avoir de l'eau. Et je disais à quelques collaborateurs que la différence entre l'électricité et l'eau, si on prend un village. Moi, je suis également un élu local. Je suis président d'une région à forte majorité rurale, donc je visite des villages. Quand je prends le même citoyen dans un village, ses attentes par rapport à l'eau et à l'électricité, c'est deux attentes différentes. Il est prêt à payer pour l'électricité, mais pour l'instant, pour des raisons historiques, sociologiques, il n'est pas prêt à payer pour l'eau. Et l'eau également est à la croisée d'enjeux importants, des enjeux de santé publique. Quelqu'un qui n'a pas d'électricité à la maison, bon, qui s'éclaire à la lampe tempête ou par d'autres moyens, ne pose pas d'enjeux de santé publique. Mais quand quelqu'un va boire l'eau de la rivière, il y a de l'eau qui est souillée, ça pose des problèmes de santé publique. Donc, c'est un devoir. L'eau potable est un devoir pour nous, en tant que gouvernants. C'est un droit. Dans notre Constitution garantit ça à cela d'ailleurs, aussi bien pour l'eau que pour l'assainissement. C'est un droit constitutionnel. C'est pour cela que je dis que l'attractivité ne pourra pas être complète sans un appui de l'État, d'une façon ou d'une autre. Au moins pour les couches les plus vulnérables. Nous allons faire les réformes avec l'aide toujours des partenaires techniques et financiers. Nous allons faire les réformes. à la fin de la journée, on veut transformer nos sociétés actuelles en sociétés de patrimoine et tout cela. D'un point de vue strictement théorique, en Côte d'Ivoire, les deux offices qui gèrent l'eau et l'assainissement, c'est l'Office national de l'eau potable et l'Office national de l'assainissement et du drainage. On nous propose de les transformer en sociétés de patrimoine. D'un point de vue strictement financier, on pense, le postulat qui est derrière ça, ça veut dire, si j'évalue les actifs du secteur de l'eau potable, c'est estimé aujourd'hui à 1045 milliards de francs CFA, les actifs du secteur. Si nous transformons le NEP en société de patrimoine, nous sommes en train de dire que nous allons mettre à son actif ces 1045 milliards d'actifs. Est-ce que c'est suffisant? Est-ce que c'est une condition suffisante pour rendre le secteur attractif, pour notamment lever des financements qui seraient backés par ce patrimoine-là? Je ne suis pas certain aujourd'hui s'il y a des financiers privés dans la salle. Je ne crois pas que ce soit suffisant, que ce soit suffisamment attractif pour ces partenaires-là aujourd'hui pour envoyer des financements vers l'eau comparativement à d'autres secteurs. Donc c'est l'élément de réponse que je peux avoir. Je ne sais pas si j'ai répondu à votre question. Alors, notre collègue de Zambie dit comment nous gérons les factures des services publics, en général les écoles, les hôpitaux. Voilà. Alors, nous n'avons pas de tarifs spécifiques pour le public. Le public paye ses factures, c'est l'État qui paye les factures du public. Alors, nous sommes en train de... Alors, est-ce qu'il y a des arriérés? Oui. L'État ne paye pas différemment ses factures d'eau que ses autres biens et services. On ne paye pas forcément en temps et en heure, mais l'État paye les factures des services publics. Alors, la question qu'on se pose aujourd'hui, puisque je suis avec les partenaires techniques et financiers, parmi vous, certains ont une aversion pour les subventions. Mais les subventions traduisent une réalité. Comme c'est un droit constitutionnel et comme c'est un devoir pour l'État de donner de l'eau à tout le monde, théoriquement, on doit donner de l'eau même à ceux qui ne sont pas en capacité de payer l'eau. On ne veut pas prendre le risque de laisser aller boire de l'eau de sources qui ne sont pas sûres, parce qu'après nous aurons en face de nous des malades, des épidémies et tout cela. Par contre, on est en train de regarder ce qui se fait au Sénégal, où l'État a décidé de surpayer ses consommations. C'est une façon détournée de subventionner l'eau. Mais tout ça, c'est des gymnastiques qu'on fait parce que certains d'entre vous ne veulent pas entendre parler de subventions d'un secteur éminemment social comme l'eau potable, comme l'assainissement. C'est pour cela que j'ai dit au départ, mettons-nous d'accord que dans l'état actuel des choses, dans un pays comme la Côte d'Ivoire, si nous voulons donner l'accès, selon les ODD, l'accès à tout le monde, un accès sécurisé et à un prix compétitif de l'eau et de l'assainissement, le tarif ne pourra jamais suffire pour le faire. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup, Votre Excellence, pour ces propos très inspirants. En fait, je suis parti derrière ce que vous avez dit et je pense que la plupart des collègues ici dans la salle apprécient beaucoup votre engagement pour la mise en œuvre d'une politique dans un contexte social, parce que souvent, quand on parle de projets d'investissement et d'infrastructure, on oublie souvent, en tout cas, l'importance des dimensions sociales et surtout l'importance de donner à l'eau cette dimension de droit de l'homme. Voilà, c'est très important. Et parmi les droits de l'homme, c'est aussi les droits de génération future d'accéder à une eau propre, disponible, qui puisse satisfaire leurs besoins fondamentaux. Je sais, Monsieur le Ministre, que votre temps est très précieux. Je vous remercie infiniment et j'appelle la salle à vous applaudir pour vos propos. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
the side event of the African Union Commission, OE.cd, and the International High-Level Panel on Water Investments in Africa will start right now. So you can come here if you're ready.
Merci bien, Aude. Bonsoir à toutes et bonsoir à tous. Et merci de votre disponibilité. Je suis conscient du temps. Donc, nous allons essayer de valoriser chaque seconde qui nous reste avant de se libérer pour la soirée. Et bienvenue pour cette session dédiée aux infrastructures d'eau transfrontalières en Afrique, notamment ceux qui s'inscrivent dans le cadre du programme pour le développement des infrastructures en Afrique, le PIDA. Je m'appelle Ibra Wahab et je suis le chef de l'unité infrastructure à l'Agence de développement de l'Union africaine, NEPAD. Et j'aurai le privilège de faciliter la conversation pour le reste de la journée. Donc cette session, comme je disais, dédiée aux infrastructures transfrontalières et au programme africain d'investissement dans le secteur de l'eau, aura deux composantes. Dans un premier temps, nous allons écouter quelques propos liminaires de la part de nos responsables de différentes institutions. Ensuite, nous allons passer à une table ronde, à un panel de discussion. Et nous allons conclure avec quelques questions et des réponses éventuellement. Donc, sans plus tarder, avec votre permission, je voudrais appeler pour les remarques d'ouverture le premier intervenant, mon directeur, M. Amin Idriss Adoum, qui est le directeur en charge des infrastructures, de l'industrialisation, du commerce et de l'intégration régionale à EUD-NEPAD. Pour votre propos liminaire, Amin, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Ibra. Mesdames et messieurs, vos excellences, tout protocole observé. Donc, je vais parler en français. Je pense qu'on est en Côte d'Ivoire. Ici, on parle français. Je m'appelle Amin Idriss et je suis le directeur des infrastructures. À OE.cd, nous traitons bien sûr l'accès à l'eau comme un problème d'infrastructure d'abord. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle nos projets d'eau sont inclus dans le PIDA qui est le programme pour le développement des infrastructures en Afrique, que OE.cd met en œuvre, bien sûr, sous la supervision politique de la Commission de l'Union africaine, mais aussi avec le soutien financier des partenaires, parmi lesquels la Banque africaine de développement. Le PIDA 2, donc nous sommes à la deuxième génération du PIDA, qui a commencé en 2021 et qui va se terminer en 2030, contient 69 projets, des projets transnationaux, des projets transfrontaliers, des projets transrégionaux. Et sur les 69 projets, 15 projets sont des projets dédiés à l'eau, des projets dédiés, si vous voulez, aux infrastructures de l'eau. Vous avez essentiellement tout ce qui est projet hydroélectrique, dans les barrages, des barrages multimodaux à multiples dimensions, d'une part. Vous avez aussi des projets de transport à travers justement l'eau, donc autour des lacs, des rivières ou des projets maritimes. L'un des projets phares, d'ailleurs, c'est le VICMET, celui de la navigation depuis le lac Victoria jusqu'à Alexandrie. Il y a aussi, bien sûr, des projets de transfert d'eau, spécialement pour pouvoir lutter contre la désertification ou l'assèchement des lacs. Par exemple, nous avons le transfert des eaux du Bria vers le lac Tchad, par exemple, et puis des projets d'adduction d'eau potable, dont un à Madagascar, spécialement, donc, qui est un projet à vocation sociale. L'ensemble des projets d'eau ou des projets liés à l'eau, en fait, que nous mettons en œuvre à travers le PILA 2, c'est 15 pour une valeur totale d'environ 12 milliards de dollars, et nous estimons qu'il faut environ 1,7 milliard de dollars pour la phase de préparation. Je voudrais donc vous parler ici, dans mes propos liminaires, de l'importance de cette phase de préparation. Je pense tout au long de la journée, les différents intervenants qui sont passés dans les tables rondes ou ici ont évoqué justement la difficulté qu'il y a à structurer des projets d'eau afin qu'ils soient bancables, qu'ils soient financièrement viables. Et c'est justement le travail auquel s'attelle en fait notre agence. Notre agence, à travers deux mécanismes. Le premier mécanisme, c'est le SDM ou le MPES, mécanisme de prestation de services en français, qui est un mécanisme qui vise justement à prendre les projets d'infrastructure au niveau de la phase d'initiation afin de les clarifier. Et puis ensuite, nous investissons du temps, de l'argent, des ressources pour pouvoir créer les conditions optimales à une bonne préparation et rendre ces projets bancables avant éventuellement de passer à la phase de préparation en tant que telle, donc qui requiert de l'argent. Donc nous effectuons cette phase de pré-préparation pour pouvoir justement convaincre les partenaires techniques et financiers, mais aussi le secteur privé et toutes les parties prenantes de mettre des ressources pour financer la phase de préparation et rendre ce projet viable et fiable, justement, le rendre bancable afin qu'il puisse attirer les investisseurs. Je voudrais à ce propos d'ailleurs rapidement rappeler tout à l'heure, suite aux propos du ministre, qu'à Odanepat, nous croyons fortement que c'est quasiment impossible aujourd'hui de donner de l'eau potable, en tout cas à nos citoyens en Afrique, sans subvention de la part de l'État. Je pense que c'est une vue de l'esprit de croire que tout doit être privatisé dans ce sens-là. C'est notre position à Odanepat et elle est très claire. Et c'est d'ailleurs dans ce sens que nous travaillons à travers le SDM. Le deuxième mécanisme, c'est le AIP, donc, qui est le plan d'investissement dans le secteur de l'eau en Afrique, le AIP, donc avec le Global Water Programme. Le AIP vise, disons, à trois dimensions. La première dimension, bien sûr, c'est soutenir justement ce travail de pré-préparation, ce travail qui consiste à créer un environnement viable pour que les projets d'eau puissent être financés comme il se doit. Donc, c'est ce travail de plaidoyer donc, auquel s'adonne le AIP. Et nous soutenons donc toute cette démarche. Et puis, bien sûr, la deuxième dimension du AIP, c'est de traduire ce plaidoyer parvenir à traduire ce plaidoyer en espèces sonnantes et trébuchantes, en financement viable surtout, pas n'importe quel financement. Et la troisième dimension du plaidoyer à travers le AIP, c'est de faire en sorte que tous les projets liés à l'eau, évidemment, contribuent efficacement au développement économique d'une part et à la création d'emplois de l'autre. Ce sont les trois dimensions, je dirais, politiques de l'AIP. Nous avons inscrit le AIP dans le PILA 2, dans la deuxième génération du PILA. D'ailleurs, je vous invite, si vous ne l'avez pas encore pris, je vous invite à récupérer, je pense à l'extérieur, ce prospectus que nous avons mis en circulation. Mais vous pourrez aussi, si vous voulez contribuer à la sauvegarde de la planète, aller directement sur le QR code et puis télécharger la version voilà, en ligne. C'est beaucoup plus facile et vous pourrez la distribuer. Donc ça, ce sont les deux. Je pense qu'on a mis ça sur les tables, vous pourrez télécharger directement ça. Pour revenir encore une fois sur, excusez-moi, sur les discussions qui vont avoir lieu dans ce panel. En tout cas, pour nous, à Odanepat, nous espérons, à travers cette 10e table ronde, contribuer justement à accroître la pertinence du plaidoyer de l'AIP, mais aussi la pertinence du plaidoyer de nos États membres et de nos régions en faveur d'un accroissement, d'une augmentation de l'attention qui doit être donnée au projet d'eau, d'une part, mais aussi contribuer à mobiliser des ressources pour qu'on puisse investir dans la phase de pré-préparation et la phase de préparation. Et ça, c'est obligatoire parce que comme tous les projets d'infrastructures transrégionaux ou même des infrastructures au niveau national en Afrique, ce qui manque, c'est une bonne préparation. Mais ce qui manque au-delà d'une bonne préparation, c'est plutôt des conditions optimales de gouvernance au niveau local, au niveau national, pour qu'on puisse pousser le projet et le rendre viable et éventuellement, je dirais, attractif pour tout le monde, pas simplement pour les investisseurs, mais aussi pour les pouvoirs publics et je pense l'ensemble de la communauté. Donc nous espérons en tout cas à travers ce débat que nous pourrons contribuer efficacement à ce plaidoyer. Je voudrais, pour terminer, mesdames et messieurs, encore une fois, vous inviter à télécharger notre prospectus. Il donne des informations assez claires sur les 15 projets transrégionaux qui sont essentiellement dans le domaine, bien sûr, de l'accès à l'énergie renouvelable, dans le domaine du transport, dans le domaine social aussi, spécialement à travers les projets d'adduction d'eau potable, mais aussi dans le domaine justement de la réduction des risques climatiques, spécialement vers la région du lac Tchad à travers le projet de transfert d'eau du Bria vers le lac Tchad. Donc voilà, sans plus tarder, je repasse la parole à Ibra et nous allons écouter les différentes interventions dans ce panel. Merci beaucoup pour votre attention.
Merci bien, Amin. Merci. Merci beaucoup pour ces propos qui illustrent de façon concrète les interventions des EUD et NEPAD dans les secteurs de l'eau, notamment les projets à caractère transfrontalier. À présent, je voudrais inviter le docteur Niels Flanderen, qui est le représentant du Royaume des Pays-Bas dans le panel de haut niveau sur les investissements dans les infrastructures en eau en Afrique. S'il vous plaît.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to take the floor again today. At this moment, I speak on behalf as a representative of the Dutch High-Level Panel Sherpa, and I like to make a few remarks. At the UN 2023 Water Conference, this high-level panel delivered its first report. And this report made clear that where the finance can be found. And when you read the report, you can find the pyramid of transformation. It is a very useful visualization that has brought to the discussion on finance more focus on increasing efficiency in the sector and domestic resource mobilization. I like to thank the people who worked over the past 6 months in 9 task forces to go through each of the layers of this pyramid and define the how the funds in each of the layers of the pyramid can be mobilized. This is the content of the investment plan. And that's the second report of the high-level panel that will be launched during the COP. Let me highlight two key findings. One of the key findings is that African governments do have pipelines of projects, but matching supply and demand of finance is a time-consuming and process that needs to be made more efficient. But there's a lack of viable program and project pipeline containing projects that are tailored for different lending opportunities. There's a world of projects and there's the world of big finance. Another key finding of the investment plan is that neither the supply nor the demand side is focusing on funding system strengthening. That's the bottom layer of the pyramid of transformation. That is focused on increasing efficiency of existing funds. Foundation requirements, also called the enabling environment or a systems approach, include updated and robust national policies and strategies, institutional capacity building, costed water investment programs, monitoring and reporting, financial management systems, legal frameworks, clear regulations, and efficient service providers. Countries should define these aspects of water and water services to be monitored and evaluated, to set up monitoring framework and build the capacity to monitor and evaluate progress and performance against targets. Disaggregation of these indicators by population groups and strengthening civil society engagement are required to improve equity. And financial monitoring should be achieved through strengthening public financial management systems to improve reporting and accountability on water, including financial auditing of government accounts. These are two of the many findings in this report, and well, of course, the official launch is during COP, but I think it's also from our side, with our minor contribution to this work, I'd like to thank you all for this cooperation on behalf of my government. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Flandern, for this intervention. We look forward for the launch of the report of the high-level panel on water investment in Africa during COP28 in United Arab Emirates. Thank you very much. À présent, je voudrais inviter M. Mohamed Diatta, qui est le représentant et Sherpa spécial de son Excellence M. le Président Macky Sall, président du Sénégal et coprésident du panel de haut niveau. Merci.
Merci, Monsieur le modérateur. Mesdames, Messieurs, chers participants, j'ai l'honneur de m'adresser à vous à l'occasion du side event du panel international de haut niveau sur les investissements pour l'eau en Afrique, en marge de la 10e table ronde de financement de l'OCDE et la BAD. Je voulais remercier sincèrement les organisateurs de cette table ronde et de l'opportunité qui est offerte pour ainsi échanger avec les participants sur les travaux du panel international de haut niveau. Cette table ronde intervient peu de temps après que son Excellence M. Macky Sall, président de la République du Sénégal, en collaboration avec le panel de haut niveau de l'Union africaine, ait lancé la campagne Mind the Gap, Invest in Water à l'occasion de la dernière Assemblée générale des Nations Unies à New York. Et pour rappel, ce panel a été lancé lors du 9e Forum mondial de l'eau, tenu à Dakar en mars 2022. Et nous reconnaissons ce panel comme étant une initiative majeure qui permettra de placer l'Afrique sur la rampe de l'accès aux objectifs de l'agenda 2063 de l'Union africaine, l'Afrique que nous voulons. Il est heureux que la Commission de l'Union africaine, le panel, ait saisi cette occasion pour abriter cette session spéciale. Ce plan d'investissement propose des mesures phares pour débloquer des investissements et combler les déficits d'investissement dans le secteur de l'eau à l'échelle de notre continent. À moins 90% des financements peuvent être obtenus à partir des ressources nationales, en améliorant l'environnement propice aux investissements, en améliorant la gouvernance surtout, en augmentant les allocations budgétaires, en assurant une prestation efficace des services d'eau, mais moins de 10% doivent provenir de l'aide publique au développement et d'autres fonds internationaux. Et ça, c'est les recommandations qui sont dans le cadre, dans le rapport de ce panel. Et les gouvernements africains ont un rôle central à jouer, comme l'a dit le représentant d'Aoudou Napat, le directeur que je salue de passage, à jouer pour influencer l'environnement propice à la mobilisation et à la mise en œuvre des financements. L'eau est une opportunité d'investissement. L'eau offre des opportunités d'investissement à notre continent et que le déficit d'investissement dans l'eau représente une opportunité que les États doivent saisir pour mettre en œuvre l'accès universel au cœur de leurs priorités. Investir dans la sécurité de l'eau et de l'assainissement résilient au climat permettra d'atteindre les objectifs de développement social et économique de l'Afrique avec des gains en matière de santé, d'éducation, d'énergie, de sécurité alimentaire, d'égalité de genre et plus encore. Au cours de la préparation du plan d'action sur l'investissement dans l'eau en Afrique, 53 projets nationaux d'une valeur d'investissement combiné de 27 milliards de dollars ont été soumis au panel et à l'Union africaine par 19 pays. Donc, ça montre que l'engouement que le panel est en train de prendre au fil des années, et il est heureux que ces pays africains aient répondu favorablement à l'appel du panel. Les opportunités d'investissement couvrent l'ensemble de la chaîne de valeur de l'approvisionnement en eau, y compris les projets d'infrastructure, hydroélectricité, irrigation, eau et assainissement, développement des ressources en eau, et la gouvernance, gestion intégrée des ressources en eau, renforcement des capacités, planification, système d'information. Donc, cela montre cette palette de projets qui ont été déposés et qui concernent l'ensemble des axes qui couvrent la gouvernance également. Donc, plusieurs projets se sont concentrés exclusivement sur la gouvernance, notamment le renforcement de l'environnement favorable en améliorant les systèmes d'information efficaces et le renforcement des capacités. Cela montre que l'Afrique a besoin plus de se structurer autour de la gouvernance de ce secteur parce que les ressources existent, il nous faudra nous organiser pour les mobiliser. Les besoins en investissement dans le domaine de l'eau sur le continent sont énormes. Les opportunités offertes par le plan d'action d'investissement dans le panel ne représentent qu'une partie de ces besoins. Nous devons mobiliser des fonds en toute urgence. C'est pourquoi l'Union africaine et le panel ont lancé la campagne Mind the Gap qui vise à mobiliser 30 milliards de dollars par an d'ici 2030 pour combler le déficit d'investissement dans le secteur de l'eau en Afrique. Il est bien d'avoir des objectifs, mais maintenant, il faut de manière très opérationnelle décliner la feuille de route pour la mobilisation des ressources, l'utilisation de ces ressources et l'impact attendu sur le terrain par les populations africaines. Lors du lancement de la campagne Mind the Gap du panel de haut niveau en septembre dernier à New York, son Excellence Macky Sall avait annoncé également la création du partenariat pour l'investissement dans l'eau en Afrique. Ce partenariat permettra de promouvoir la campagne et de soutenir l'Union africaine dans la mise en œuvre des recommandations du panel et du plan d'action en la matière. Mesdames, Messieurs, au rythme actuel, le continent n'atteindra pas les objectifs de développement durable liés à l'eau. L'Union africaine et le panel lanceront le plan d'investissement pour l'eau en Afrique lors de la COP28 aux Émirats arabes unis à Dubaï. Aujourd'hui, le plan d'action pour l'investissement sera présenté. Nous invitons à contribuer activement aux échanges et à participer à soutenir la mise en œuvre des 5 actions proposées par le plan d'action pour l'investissement dans l'eau en Afrique. Parmi ces 5 actions, la première porte sur la priorité à donner aux plateformes continentales et nationales qui mettent en relation les sources de financement avec les opportunités d'investissement, les projets et les programmes en quête de financement. La deuxième porte sur le renforcement à long terme de l'environnement favorable et à accroître la bancabilité des prestations de services et des projets. Troisièmement, il s'agira de créer un environnement juridique et réglementaire qui favorise la gestion de l'eau parmi les opérateurs privés. Et quatrièmement, créer un environnement favorable et réglementaire qui favorise la gestion de l'eau et qui permettra d'accéder à des capitaux moins onéreux pour l'eau et l'assainissement. Et enfin, renforcer les systèmes de données et d'information afin que les progrès puissent être suivis et évalués. Enfin, je voudrais dire que la sécurité de l'eau et l'assainissement durable pour tous en Afrique sont possibles et sont largement à notre portée. Nous invitons tous nos partenaires à soutenir le plan d'action pour l'investissement africain. Nous vous encourageons à soutenir l'appel du panel de haut niveau des chefs d'État africains et des dirigeants mondiaux à unir leurs efforts pour au moins doubler les investissements actuels dans l'eau et permettre de mettre en œuvre des programmes nationaux d'investissement dans l'eau en Afrique. C'est tout le sens de la déclaration du Blue Deal du 9e Forum mondial de l'eau, mais également des conclusions de la conférence des Nations Unies tenue à New York en mars 2022. à mars 2023. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Diata, for this strong call to support the investment action plan, particularly highlighting the 27 billion 53 projects submitted by 19 African countries to the high-level panel. Now, colleagues would like to move to some online intervention. First, I would like to invite Mr. Hassan Nyambe, who is the director of the African Union Commission in charge of Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment. Online, please, Director, you have the floor. Thank you. I think, Director, either you are muted, we can't hear you. Can the IT maybe assist? Director, we still cannot hear you. Thank you.
But
Can you
some
hear
of
me
us
or
can
not?
hear him.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Please go ahead. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Ahmed. I'm advisor on water and climate and coordinating AIP, African Investment Program within AUC, African Union Commission. I am delivering this on behalf of Director Arseniadi, Director of Sustainable Environment and Blue Economy of the African Union Commission. And unfortunately, he is unable to participate. He loved to participate in person in the meeting, and due to some urgencies, you are not able to take part in the meeting in person. He just asked me to communicate his apologies. Let me, Excellencies, can you hear me now? Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I will just read his statement as is. It is my great pleasure to join the next meeting of the Roundtable on Financing Water Regional Meeting on Africa. I would like to thank the co-conveners, OECD and FDD, and partners, the government of the Netherlands and World Bank and World Water Council for organizing this important event. And it also, I think, is a very timely event. Equally important for AIP to arrange this side event towards the launch of the high-level panel investment action plan to pave the way for the plan to be officially launched during COP28. The lack of finance is one of the main barriers to achieving SDG 6 in Africa, and its contribution to other water-related goals and targets. As we all know, water cut across all SDGs, 17 of them, and cut across all development sectors, and also has a contribution to climate change and climate resilience and adaptation, because climate change manifests itself through water. Annually, 30 billion are required to close the gap in African water investment to meet SDG 6. To fill this financing gap, we need additional investment from various sources. I think the report, the panel report, identified and defined all of these sources, 9 of them, including using existing funding mechanisms more efficiently and effectively. Ladies and gentlemen, AUC in collaboration with the NEPAD and the International High-Level Panel led the preparation of the Africa Water Investment Program, launched during the report during the UN Water Conference, March 2023, and also led the campaign mind the gap in investment water during UN General Assembly SDG Summit, September 2023. The AIP panel, spearheaded by the head of states, provide strong political leadership commitments and raise the profile of financing water and resource mobilization. I think this is one of the issues and many issues raised during this morning discussion. Honorable participants, ladies and gentlemen, the Roundtable is one of the platforms in helping to shape AIP's thinking on the way of resource mobilization towards closing the gap in Africa water investment, amounts 30 billion. And to say that the report already identified the return on investment as 1 to 7, and also the cost of inaction, 200 billion annually. And this is a lot of money you are losing because of inefficiency and also the deficit in finance, investment in water. Furthermore, it is an opportunity for us to share experiences, cross-learning, and better understand financial insights, as well as raise the profile of Africa water investment within the finance and investment community, including elaborating on mechanisms to address bottlenecks and barriers. I think also this morning, issue of enabling environment and regulation frameworks and so on and so forth. Closing the finance gap through Africa Water Investment Program is critically important in achieving SDG 6 towards ensuring availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. Honorable participants, ladies and gentlemen, supported by the panel's high-level political commitments, member states will prioritize water and sanitation in their political agenda, policies, budget, and address bottlenecks. I think this also comes very clearly that the countries now, they have their own national investment programs. Zambia is an example, a program portfolio of about $5.75 billion. I think many countries now are moving forward on developing their national investment program. And this is very important, just to the issue of shopping list now no more. Call upon all of us, development partners, investors, donors, and financial institutions to support the realization of AIP and achieving water security and sustainable sanitation for all. The human rights issue, we have to work with and work hard and try to move this report and action plan forward. I wish us fruitful deliberation and outcomes. I thank you so much for your kind attention. Thank you so much, and I yield. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for reopening the strong call and for the political commitment on the International High-Level Panel Investment Plan. I would like now to call Ms. Maria Amakali, who is the panel co-chair and representative of the Republic of Namibia, online for her intervention. Ms. Amakali, you have the floor, please. Thank you. For colleagues online, we sincerely apologize. We have a short technical issue and we are fixing it for the next 2 minutes. And so in less than 2 minutes, I will come back and call upon the representative of the Republic of Namibia for her intervention. Thank you. Please bear with us.
Exactly. I think now you are a very hard worker.
Thank you very much. I think we are back. Ms. Amkali, you have the floor. You can proceed, please. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, as I was saying, all protocol observed, I would like to, as my way of welcoming remarks, to convey my greetings, the greetings of my minister, who is also the high-level panel Sherpa, Honorable Karash Letvine. And I would like to also take this opportunity and appreciate the host for inviting me or providing this opportunity to be at this event towards the launching of the high-level investment action plan. It is the ambition of Namibia to address and bring about a safe and secure water supply to all. However, the availability of financial resources has hampered the process. As such, Namibia, through the national planning process, continuously ensure that different opportunities are available to access funding, either through government budget allocation, cooperating partners, or multilateral development bank, to invest in adequate infrastructure to for water supply and sanitation services. The launch of the high-level panel report, Africa's investment tide, towards mobilizing an additional $30 billion per year in Africa is a milestone that we are proud of as a country. It may look like an ambitious task for some by 2030, but our government is committed to do its part to realize the campaign of minding the gap and investing in water. Thus, for us, it means moving closer to ensuring access to water and sanitation by 2030. Namibia appreciates the detailing of actions needed to mobilize additional funds as stipulated in the high-level panel investment action plan as a way of pointing us in the right direction. The 9 investment sources in the pyramid of transformation is well captured, but it is important that they are accessible to ensure that the poor and the vulnerable are not left behind. It is up to mainly governments and their partners to ensure that there is an enabling and inclusive environment. Equally, it's important to know that there are existing opportunities where project funding can be found. I am looking forward to this session and discussing further with everyone different ideas on financing mechanism and actions that can effectively mobilize the necessary resources to address the infrastructure financing gap. I thank you.
Thank you very much to the Republic of Namibia. And colleagues, this comes to the end of the opening remarks block of this session. I would like to thank the 3 co-chairs, Senegal, the Kingdom of Netherlands, and Namibia, the African Union Commission, and the AUD and NEPAD for the remarks. To kick off the panel discussion, we have 2 kick-off presentations. The first one will be made by the Executive Secretary of the Global Water Partnership Southern Africa, Mr. Alex Simal. Mr. Alex, I think he's online. And then the second presentation will be on a project, Angololo Water Resource Development Project. I would like to start with the presentation from Alex, which will be on AIP High-Level Panel Water Investment Action Plan. Alex, you have the floor if you're online, please.
Yes, thank you, moderator. Are you able to see my screen and hear me?
Yes, we can see your screen and we can hear you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Unfortunately, I'm not able to join in person due to some other personal issue that came up. But I would like to acknowledge the organizers, the IFDB or OECD, World Water Council and World Bank, and the Kingdom of Netherlands for the financing roundtable. So I know it's been a long day. I think, first of all, let me start also by acknowledging the representative of the Sherpas, the Republic of Senegal, Dr. Diatta, Netherlands, News, Namibia, Maria Makari, as well as our director from the African Development Agency, Dr. Amin, who opened this session, as well as Ahmed, representing the director from the African Union Commission. So I'm going to be very quick. My task here is very simple, is to try and get to the core of this investment action plan that has been mentioned a couple of times and which will be launched at COP28 in Dubai. So this you already know, most of you, is the high-level panel, the heads of states and the co-chairs. So I will not go through that. It includes heads of states as well as some global leaders, UNDP, UNICEF, and others. The panel at the UN Water Conference already launched a report that has already been alluded to, which outlines where the financing can come from. 30 billion is a lot of money. So what the panel did, and I remember President Macky Sall was the first thing he said that during the World Water Forum in Dakar, was that we need to find where the money will come from. So this is why the panel developed this report, identifying the potential sources of finance for the estimated additional 30 billion required for all. And the core message of that report, launched at the UN Water Conference, was that achieving water security on the continent is possible by 2030 and within the power of African leaders, but of course, working together with their development partners. The panel report, has already been mentioned, launched, and the core of that report was the pyramid of investment transformation, which you can see on the screen, basically showing the different financing sources, 9 of them, and where funding could come from, and potentially what could be mobilized on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side. So I'll not go through the whole pyramid, but what is significant here is to see that at the very bottom, improving the neighboring environment, improving efficiency, system strengthening is very foundational to unlocking the other sources of financing. Without this, it becomes difficult and almost impossible to be able to unlock significant funding. And the bulk of the funding is, of course, domestic funding from African governments, national governments, institutional investors that could potentially be mobilized. What is significant about this report from the high-level panel was that if you look at the amount of funding that potentially can be accessed from ODA, at the very top, it's small, only 0.5 potential billion per year could be mobilized by 2030, including from our own multilateral development banks, including a World Bank and African Development Bank and the regional development banks. We see that it's also very small, only about $1 billion more could potentially be mobilized by 2025, by 2030. The real opportunity is domestic resource mobilization, but to get that, the foundational work must be done. The deep reforms have to be done at the sector governance level, and these are the issues that have been talked about, I think, in most of today. Of importance to note is also the potential of funding from institutional investors as part of domestic finance. 14 trillion funding available globally, with 700 billion assets under management in Africa. If only 10% of this could be accessed for domestic water supply and sanitation and water security-related investments, an additional 10 billion could be unlocked. But we know, and I think this has been mentioned today, this funding from institutional investors is going to transport, agribusiness, renewable energy, real estate, tourism, but not water. because of a variety of reasons: perceived risks, poor tariff, no revenue stream, weak regulation, weak markets, and a variety of other things. So a whole host of actions need to be undertaken to be able to unlock that funding. So what the high-level panel has done now through the investment plan, which now I'm giving highlights, is to try and unpack the types of projects that are being prioritized by countries across Africa and assess whether they match the available supply of finance. And secondly, to propose concrete actions and prioritize these on how funds can be raised from each investment source and directed towards the priority projects and programs, basically matching the supply of finance and the demand for finance. So the African Union and the high-level panel launched a call as part of the process for developing this investment action plan, where they asked all African countries to submit national projects. And I insist, national projects, not transboundary one, because transboundary projects were already covered under the process led by oe.cd. But the call was for all African countries to submit priority projects meeting the criteria outlined by the high-level panel in the 5-point plan of the high-level report. And as part of this process, as I think has been mentioned, 53 projects were submitted by 19 countries. And I must note, this was only a 3-month window, so it was not a long time. And there are plans by the African Union Commission and the high-level panel to try and also have another round in the new year for additional countries to provide support to present their projects. 15 projects were received from 19 countries, combined investment value of 27 billion, covering the entire water supply value chain. And what is great and interesting is that most of the projects submitted have linkages to climate resilience and climate change adaptation, including gender transformation and gender equality. Submissions included an overview of the challenges experienced in rising finance. But what is also critical and interesting is some of the projects are already pre-financed by governments. They just need additional bridging finance. And some of them, I think about 11 of them, are actually suitable for investments and further development through PPP model, with potential estimates of revenue streams coming in terms of economic internal rate of return, as well as financial return, which means the private sector could potentially tap into these projects if they are further developed. Of the transboundary projects, what the high-level panel did was to actually get the 15 projects that are already under PIDA, and these are already included in the investment plan because they had already been prioritized as part of the PIDA PAP2. We heard this from the director, Amin, when he mentioned. They have an estimated value of about 9 billion. They include hydropower, multi-purpose dams, water resources development, and we heard earlier that they require an estimated 1.7 billion for project preparation, which funding is critical. Now, what is critical and what is important that this high-level panel investment plan highlights only a fraction of the investment opportunities on the continent. So moving forward, there will be considered efforts that will be required to foster collaboration among the different existing facilities for project preparation, including Africa Water Facility. As we know, Africa Water Facility, as was mentioned earlier, they launched a core area this year as well, inviting countries to submit projects that could potentially be considered towards the Africa Water Facility pipeline. Over 400 concept notes were received, and 8 of those have been prioritized. But there will be need for concerted collaboration, not only with this, but also with the World Bank. I think we also heard this morning about SIWA, which also prioritizes support for transit projects, and many others. Now, what are the key actions that the high-level panel investment plan is proposing? So the investment plan is proposing key priority actions for each layer of the pyramid. So I go back to the pyramid again. On the left side, the 9 investment sources that are in the high-level panel report that was launched at the UN Water Conference. What you have on the right side are some of the key actions through consultations, stakeholders, utility managers, governments, and experts have proposed that needs to be undertaken by countries, of course, based on their context. As an example, the very foundational layer of water governance and improving efficiencies. One of the key actions is for governments to commit funds to strengthen the enabling environment for water investments. Why? Because we know that multilateral development banks, financial institutions don't necessarily have resources or want to finance upstream preparation of projects. and I think we've heard about this also from Audanepad. Governments have to prioritize dedicated funding to strengthen the enabling environment. Regulation, markets was identified as a key issue, including relevant appropriate PP frameworks, the right prices, tariff structures that need to be looked at. So governments have to undertake these actions and be in the lead. The need to develop well-prioritized and comprehensive multi-sectoral costed water investment programs with clear prioritized projects that at least include pre-feasibility, not just a list of projects included in a document, but actually projects that have undergone some level of pre-feasibility to be able to engage with potential financiers and investors that might want to invest in these projects. Strengthening the public financial management system is critical. Monitoring systems, transparency, ensuring service provider benchmarking of performance and improvements, and of course, ensuring efficiency in terms of utility efficiency, energy efficiency, and just doing a good professional job of managing utilities. These are key foundational actions that are proposed as part of the investment plan. Ensuring that the supply side measures to strengthen and improve the enabling environment and attract finance actually implemented, and the demand side are also very much as well. The measures are also put in place rather than just going for capital investments. Then also, if I move to the domestic investment category, some of the key proposed actions there include strengthening the legal basis and the regulations for private sector investments. Otherwise, they're not going to do it. They're not going to come in. Strengthening PP frameworks. Without an appropriate PP framework, it will be very difficult for the private sector to come in. If they come in, it's a big risk for them, but it's also a big risk for the government. So the rules of the game must be very clear in terms of sector regulation and who plays what role. Robust project pipeline, improved credit worthiness, these are all issues that must be taken into consideration within countries. And also, when we go, for instance, to climate finance, what is critical is to communicate the evidence on water and climate leakages and link water resources projects to national adaptation plans, NDCs, and other higher level ambitions that are connected to implementation of the Paris Agreement, because virtually most funding now want to ensure that you're contributing to climate resilience goals of the country. And finally, in terms of ODA and also as the multilateral finance institutions, improving the loan conditions, affordability of capital. We've heard our leaders keep saying that we need a reform of the finance institutions, and the global architecture for finance does not favor developing countries. They borrow at high rates compared to their counterparts in their developed nations. So, improving the term conditions of loans is an issue that also is where goes beyond the water sector, but also having a well-governed macroeconomic environment and also that can enhance affordable capital is also a key issue that also has to be highlighted. Even though it's a small amount, it's very critical that the principles of all the principles of aid harmonizations are implemented. Because often what you find is that donors sometimes are fragmenting their efforts within countries, coming up with so many initiatives that duplicate and sometimes undermine efforts to ensure comprehensive sector coordination. In many countries, there are efforts to ensure and strengthen multi-sectoral coordination, and it's important to build on this so that the ODA funding can be better leveraged to de-risk some of the key barriers around investments in the water sector in many African countries. So the investment plan highlights a whole host of actions, and you'll be able to see that once it is launched at COP28. But just to summarize some of the key 5 actions that have been proposed in the investment action plan, as I try to conclude, include: number 1, prioritize continental and country level platforms that match funding sources to investment opportunities, projects, and programs. What is this about? It's about strengthening the project pipeline and revenue streams to meet the expectations and needs of a range of investors, including climate funds. Engaging a range of investors and supporters to bring ideas and expertise and to build capacity, and strengthen coordination among key ministries. What we find often is that the water ministry is often struggling to coordinate other sector ministries, even though we know that, for instance, most of the water use on the continent is agriculture sector. But in some cases, it struggles to coordinate with programs that are implemented in irrigation. The need to hold national and regional and even continental investment dialogues that bring the investors, the supply of finances, as well as the country pipeline of projects. This is very, very critical in order to supply, to bridge the gap. And we've seen this in other sectors like energy, like agriculture as well. This has been happening. We need to do more of that in Africa under the leadership that is already in place. Number two, committing long-term strengthening of the enabling environment and increasing the bankability of service providers. This is not a this is not a sprint. This is a long haul. Strengthening the enabling environment requires long-term commitment with governments leading the processes, and of course, investing in updated and robust national policies, strategies, and institutional building to ensure that you have proper and well-functioning legal systems, financial management systems, clear regulations, and efficient service providers. It's very difficult for any utility to get any funding if they are not efficient. If 60% of the water is lost that has been treated and the revenue is not collected, it's very difficult. Even if the enabling environment is right, the funding is not going to be provided. So lead national agencies must engage in a range of stakeholders with a range of stakeholders to initiate key foundational actions and prioritize actions to strengthen the enabling environment. There's no way running away from this. Number three, creating legal and regulatory environment that promotes water stewardship amongst commercial water users. This is very, very critical. We had focus group discussions as part of this work with the private sector. And most of them were like, look, when we look at investments, we don't just look at water, we look at food security, health sector, hospitality, and many others. And if we see that water doesn't seem to be very clear in terms of the legal framework, we don't even waste our time because there are other priorities. So enhancing a robust legal framework and regulatory framework is very, very critical to be able to promote not only private investments, but also water stewardship among utilities and companies. National governments need to hold to account all commercial entities using water, not only paying for water resources, but also for water resources protection and development, enforcing of penalties, and also award of incentives for good behavior and good performance is very, very important. And financial institutions also need to account for water-related risks that activities, for the activities that they finance and are exposed to reflect water risk in their pricing of capital. Number four, enabling African governments to address cheaper capital, to access cheaper capital for water security and sustainable sanitation. Development partners need to provide access to concessional capital, affordable concessional capital, and participate in blended financing mechanisms that leverage larger funding. There is no point in continuously just giving grants. I know in the water sector, we like grants. And the studies, the high-level panel has realized there's heavy dependence on grants in the water sector, and grants cannot solve the water security challenge in Africa. So blended finance mechanisms are required, so where you can leverage public finance to bring in larger pools of capital, to access larger pools of capital from private sector and other sources. I already mentioned about the importance of improving financial sector regulation, and more importantly, governments must send an important signal at the national level, at the highest level, about the position of water security in the country. If the president of the country, the cabinet ministers do not promote water as a key sector to economic development and also promoting social inclusion, if they don't send that signal, it becomes very difficult for others because water, as has been mentioned, I think, as we all know, at the end of the day, it's a government responsibility. So government must position water at the right level and not just as a social good, because water is more than just a social good. There's also been a proposal at the continental level. It would be critical to consider efforts to strengthen the coordination of water security interventions at the continental level and possibly consider having a committee of heads of state that would be there to mobilize high-level political leadership and commitment to champion water investments. And this is really building on the lessons from other sectors. Climate change has a committee on heads of state, Kahosk.
Alex, you have 2 minutes.
By the heads of states around the issue of climate change. And as I wind up in terms of my final point, strengthen data and information systems so that progress can be monitored and evaluated. This is really important. Without data, it's very difficult to measure progress and to see where the challenges are and where the interventions are needed. Countries must invest in data. It's the responsibility of countries to be able to do this. We have a system that has been developed by the African Ministers' Council on Water called WASMO, which has been trying as much as possible to try and map the interventions that are required around strengthening data and collecting information to be able to ensure that you're able to measure progress. So this needs to be implemented. AUD and EPAD already developed the water investment scorecard approved by heads of state with a range of indicators that also need to be supported and implemented to be able to monitor progress, see where the challenges are and where the interventions are. So I will end here, but just to say that the projects that have been identified and received by the high-level panel will be accessible through a web platform that is linked to AUD and EPAD's PIDA platform, PIDA Information System on Infrastructure, which includes all the different projects that have been identified that have been received by the AUC and the high-level expert panel as part of this process. So thank you very much, and we look forward to the panel discussion. And also, just to emphasize, this event for the launch of the high-level panel investment plan is taking place 2nd December, COP28, African Union Pavilion in Dubai. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you very much. Just quickly, I would like to invite the Angololo Multi-Purpose Dam project for their presentation. I hope that they will be able to fix it in 5 minutes, and then we will move to the panel discussion. Mr. Okirwa, you have the floor if you are online, please. Okay.
Greetings, distinguished participants and delegates. My name is Martin Okiria. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. We can see you. If you can launch your presentation in presentation mode, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm making this presentation on behalf of the NELSAP regional coordinator, who is also online and will supplement where need be. So NELSAP, with grant financing from PIDA, IPPF, prepared Angololo Water Resources Management Project. That funding enabled NELSAP to undertake 3 major studies on this project. One, we did the feasibility studies, detailed designs, and preparing tender documents. We also did environmental and social impact studies with that funding, and also did the resettlement action plan and compensation framework. So about Angololo project specifically, it falls within what we call the Sio Malaba Malakisi River Basin Management Project. I mean basin. This is a transboundary river system that is shared between the Republic of Kenya and Uganda. And when you look at the challenges faced at basin level, we have energy, water, and food insecurity. In this basin that supports livelihoods of over 4 million people. The community, over 70% of them derive their livelihood from rain-fed subsistence agriculture. And following the recent studies that we did, over 90% of the community members use firewood for cooking. Some of them use charcoal. And less than 6% of the communities are connected to the national grid. When it comes to access to clean and safe water, less than 25%, which is far below the national average, have access to safe and clean water. So Angololo project basically is designed to address some of these challenges in the areas of food supply, water security, energy, and then also reverse environmental degradation. The project comprises of about 6 major components. It will have a dam of about 31.6 million cubic in terms of storage. And the dam height is about 40 meters high. It has a mini hydro power plant of about 1.3 megawatts. To supplement this mini hydropower, we conceived an idea of having a floating solar system. And we just do estimates. If you take about 10% of the surface area that will be impounded, that surface area is about 2.8 square kilometers. If you take just 10% of that, you can be in position to generate about 20 megawatts. So we have here examples of solar private sector players who have installed solar panels, connected them to the national grid. So an example, we have Solar North here, which actually generates about 10 megawatts. And this plant sits on about 32 acres of land. So when we have the open water sources and introduce the floating solar system, it will help reduce evapotranspiration losses, but also improve the efficiency, cooling efficiency and performance of these solar panels. The other component is the irrigation area development, which is about 4,000 hectares. And this will be split between Kenya and Uganda, each having like 2,000 hectares. The other component is domestic water supply to about 270,000 residents within the towns of Busia and Malaba. On the Ugandan side, these areas cover Tororo district, Manafa, and Amisindwa. There is also a component to do livestock water supply, and then also manage the catchment. So the total catchment is about 447 square kilometers, so about 30% of that catchment. So there are a wide range of benefits, including supplying water, generating hydropower, creating lots of employment for the youth. When you take the case of Uganda, nearly 50% of the population are below 15 years. So we have a very huge youth population, and since agriculture is the main kind of livelihood in this area, it would help employ so many of them. The project also is expected to contribute to Kenya's Vision 2030 and Uganda's Vision 2040. Both aim at having access to clean water at 100%, of which this area where the project is designed for, many of them are below 25% access. So the project will also contribute to the African Union Agenda of 2063, the FDB's high fives, and also several United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Following the feasibility and detailed designs that were conducted for Angololo project, the investment cost is roughly about $132 million US. And we are still at the process of preparing legal documents to support the joint implementation, since this is a transboundary project. And when it comes to financing this project, the stakeholders are looking at the blended kind of financing structure that involves both private capital and then also development funding with concessional kind of interest rates. In economic terms, following the feasibility studies that were conducted, the project is economically viable with interest rates of about, economic interest rates of about 14%, which are higher than the economic opportunity cost of capital for both Kenya and Uganda. And also in terms of financial viability, we have about 8% interest rate. So in terms of concessional funding for the project to be financially viable, we would expect interest rates of about 8% or less. As I said, the parties are in the process of preparing some legal instruments, which is basically a bilateral agreement between the Republic of Kenya and Uganda. So we are looking at coming up with the best implementation model for this project. We are looking at a model similar to that of Rusumo, where a special purpose vehicle in terms of a limited liability company was created to basically manage the implementation. with the oversight and supervision from NELSAP representing the countries. So we look at these special purpose vehicles to continue the operational phase of the project, ensuring its sustainability and continue to manage the project. Also, under implementation arrangement, NELSAP is expected to play a lead role since this is a transboundary project in bringing together the two countries to coordinate its implementation. So far to date, the current status, we have finished the major studies that are prerequisites to make most of these funding institutions. So we have done the feasibility studies, we have done the ASEAN draft studies. All these were completed in November 2022. So far we have prepared a bilateral agreement that has been reviewed by both parties, that is Kenya and Uganda. And before the end of this year, we shall have finalized the preparation of this bilateral agreement for joint implementation, negotiating it, and hopefully in the early 2024, we shall have this bilateral agreement signed. Since this project is will require some involuntary resettlement and relocations, so we expect to have some challenge in the slow process of implementing the resettlement action plan, because typically this is done by the countries. So far, the project has been included in the national development plans, but actually to actualize this process, to implement the RAP and the compensation framework takes a while. And for the land to be available for development, definitely countries have to push this phase through. The next steps, we expect to complete the preparation of the bilateral agreement and continue engaging potential development partners to fund the implementation of this project. Both republics of Kenya and Uganda have taken good steps in contacting some of the development partners. Key among them is the African Development Bank. So I have here screenshots of the Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development from the Republic of Uganda writing to the country manager, African Development Bank. So this actually demonstrates the commitment of countries and shows how they have prioritized this project. Kenya is also doing the same. They are contacting some development partners to show that they need to see this project come to implementation and operational phase. Also, there are some discussions with some companies that think they can link the parties to some financing institution. So these are some of the discussions. We have the China Water Energy Group, then we have the Baylor Group. There are some, at least, who are showing interest to connect the parties to some financing institutions. But these talks have not yet reached that level where we say it is mature enough. Thank you very much. Perhaps the regional coordinator and LSAP can supplement where I left out some key issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Martin, for the presentation. Yeah, I understand the timing constraint, but colleagues, please bear with us as we will take us through the last panel discussion of the day. And for that, I would like to invite to the floor the coordinator of the Africa Water Facility, Mr. Mchera Chirwa, and then the Executive Secretary of Limpopo Water Course Commission, Mr. Sergio Sitoe, and then the Senior Advisor on WASH and Water and Climate Resilience at UNICEF, Ms. Farai Tunhama. And then the Senior Operation Officer, Water Pre-Investment, Municipal and Natural Resource Infrastructure at IFC, Mr. Nawal Mary. I think the representative from IFC stepped out, so let me kickstart with the Africa Africa Water Facility, and roughly, I think I would just ask. Initially, we planned to have a 2-round conversation, but now I think I will shorten it, and I would expect if our dear panelists can shorten it also, 3 to 5 minutes, so that we will be able to set the colleague free. So basically, the Africa Water Facility has great experience, particularly in transboundary water projects since their inception in 2004 up to now. If you can please shed light on your experience, what has been the key success factor in securing funding for transboundary water project? But more importantly, how do you ensure that the effort you invest in financing the preparation of those projects don't fail, and we ensure that the project go straight to the implementation after your preparation? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibra, and for this opportunity to share some of our experiences and perhaps lessons, because over the years we've learned some lessons that will help us going forward. I think what's key, and the presentations already in this session have touched on key elements. I think Alex in his presentation talked about key elements or comprising the action plan to mobilize financing. The presentation just ended on the Angololo also touched on key elements that would ensure success. Of course, financing has not been secured for this project, but I think it's on course to secure financing. So for transboundary projects, they're generally more complex, as we know, than national projects because you're dealing with multiple jurisdictions. First is to ensure the countries involved have consensus, because our experience is that sometimes prioritization is not at the same level. So countries need to agree, need to sign agreements like memorandum of agreements or implementation agreements to demonstrate their commitment. They need to ensure the project appears as a priority in their national development plans, because this is key, because financing, especially downstream investments, are linked to national development priorities. The African Development Bank works with countries to prioritize investments in the country strategy papers, and to do that, we look at priorities identified by countries. So a regional project could be supported by a regional agency, but once it is identified as a priority, the country needs to reflect that, and I think the example of Angololo there touches on that. These steps, and there are many more, I wouldn't want to belabor, but these steps are key to ensuring the project can secure downstream investments. What's also important for us now, and this is a lesson we've learned as Africa Water Facility over the years, when we prioritize project financing, at the screening stage of the request of the project concept, we need to already ask the question, who is going to finance this project? Because in the past, we've supported preparation projects, some of which never secured financing. Why? Because sometimes country priorities change, perhaps a government change led to other priorities. Perhaps the investment costs were so huge that at the time you want to invest, the country maybe has got a lot of large external commitments and cannot take on additional financing, many other factors. So we need to see visibility early on that either the project has a committed financier or a DFI has expressed interest. That's the first at entry. Once we see that, during the preparation phase, we have ourselves developed what we're calling an investment promotion action plan, which ensures that we engage with potential investors, DFIs, and partners throughout the project preparation cycle to keep them informed, get them interested, so that at the end of the studies, the project can secure financing and could be in a blended financing arrangement, a syndicated structure, or co-financing arrangements, depending on the size of a project. Let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for highlighting those points, and which lead me to the Limpopo River Basin Organization. So you hear from the bank the importance of government commitment, but also the importance of proper prioritization of project. Because they are transboundary, I'm really tempted to ask, what should be the role of river basin organizations like yours? And when we move to the financing aspect, what kind of partnership do you see and the role of private sector in your relationship to the project implementation? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think I'll also borrow from what the presentation that was made by Alex when he was indicating that there is a need to strengthen the river basin organizations in terms of how they're preparing themselves to undertake, you know, the aspects of finance mobilization. I would say that from where I sit and looking back, you know, to the river basins in the Southern Africa regions, most of them, I mean, if not all, they do have an advisory role, which they're there to advise the member states on issues related to water resource management in their respective basins. So that does not give them enough power to move to kind of a finance mobilization for huge infrastructures, for instance, like dams development, which some of them can be for a mutual benefit for the basin as a whole. But then there comes, you know, the strong commitment of member states, you know, taking into account that the powers that they were given to the river basin as such does not go until where it was supposed to go. So there's a need to change the mandate of the river basin organization to allow them to take a step further in moving, for instance, to a kind of a preparation of those projects, and also assisting the member states on the design phase and including the mobilization of funds and such. You'll find that what happens so far is that most of the infrastructures that have been implemented in river basins, they are still driven by the commitment of member states themselves. So you'll find that most of the funds that are built, that are brought to the infrastructures for water supply, are also mobilized by member states through the different platforms that exist. But then we really need to make sure that the RBOs are enough strengthened, or the mandate is also changed or made it strong to really play that role. So we'll find that there are some movements toward that. We have, for instance, you know, in Southern Africa, the example of Orange Senko River Basin, which is now also assisting the member states that are part of the Orange Senko River, you know, to develop a pipeline to a water supply transfer scheme that will take water from Lesotho to Botswana, supplying all those who sit along the river. So that's a benefit for the whole river basin. But then this is driven by the Orange Senko River Basin Secretariat, which a mandate has particularly been given at the ministerial level. But we need to formalize those in terms of how all the member states, they do have that power to do so. So what I'm trying to say is that it's proven that its power is there. The RBOs can strengthen themselves to undertake that role, and can also equip themselves in terms of expertise, you know, to advise, but even over to assist on a project preparation for infrastructure development. I'll pause there.
Thank you very much. I will come to UNICEF to give us maybe a slightly different perspective, where you hear from the bank and from the river organization. But for you specifically, I will recall the 30 billion investment gap that Alex presented, which generally we think about infrastructure, but WASH, particularly the sanitation and hygiene aspect, is another component of water financing gap. And I would like really, from UNICEF perspective, if you can share your experience and give us some example, and how did you mobilize financing for WASH project across the continent? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think as UNICEF, we are not mostly known for mobilizing finance beyond the usual grant mechanisms or resources that we get as part of the UN system. Today I will talk to you about the Ghana Sanitation Fund, and I hope the colleagues from Ghana in the room will forgive me, because I probably will not do a lot of justice in terms of talking about that example. So as UNICEF in 2019, we started working with the government of Ghana, and we started off with what we called the Basic Hygiene Fund. And it was a small pilot where we wanted to test the idea of working with Apex Bank through their network of 150 rural banks within the country, for us to have a revolving fund that would allow households as well as SMEs to access financing targeted at sanitation investments at a household level, but also ensuring that that value chain worked. Why did we opt to work in this space? We saw there was a huge unserved population. About 56% of the population used shared facilities. There was also an investment from households of about 30 million per year that they themselves were making. And of course, as UNICEF, we saw a lot of deaths amongst the under fives because of the lack of sanitation services. And I think that was probably the bigger driver for us to look for a much more sustainable solution. So with an initial investment of $500,000 from UNICEF, and what became about $2.5 million coming from the government of Ghana itself, we then worked on this revolving fund. One of the key things that we found from that revolving fund was that we were getting repayments, because there was this belief that the sector would not make repayments. We also learned through true partnership, and the minister just mentioned that true partnership is key. We found UNICEF taking a risk. We had to borrow the initial funds, and anyone who knows the UN system, really ensuring that our comptroller allows us to borrow and tell them in 5 years you will get your money back is not an easy task. And the bank itself, Apex Bank, also took this big risk, because they committed to repaying the full amount based on their rural banks also committing to pay them back. And the government of Ghana itself also took a chance, because it was their credibility to their people that was on the line if this thing did not work. So we did see a true partnership coming out. Now, as we speak, almost 4 or 5 years later, we are now transforming this basic sanitation fund to what we call the Ghana Sanitation Fund. We are now starting to talk of investments, not the $500,000 or the $2 million that we started off with, but really being ambitious to talk about 20 to 50 million. We have also seen different amendments of this same arrangement in Togo as well as in Nigeria. So we really have a sense that this works, and it's something that can be replicated at scale. And we really do hope that we are able to get more support coming through to Ghana and the other countries I've mentioned, because we know it works. And particularly with sanitation, where we have such a huge household burden, we do see this making a change as we move towards trying to achieve as much of what we can of SDG 6.2 before 2030.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Last but not the least, I will go to the International Finance Corporation, IFC, and maybe I will try to ask a combination of questions. And one is, we have been hearing the conversation around transboundary water project. They seem to be complex in terms of securing financing. So from the wide experience of IFC, what are the key best practice that you can recommend to enhance the readiness for investment, particularly private sector investment, in this kind of transboundary water project? But also, if you have 3 main tech that you can give to government that are in the rooms and the regional organization to bring private investment into water project, what would be those elements? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just to remind a little bit, so IFC is dedicated to private sector and subnational, so non-sovereign funding. Okay, so we cannot work with sovereign guarantees. So for transboundary, actually it's supranational, right? It also involves, I mean, different jurisdiction, different countries, so strong necessity for very strong legal agreements that cannot be challenged, so that you provide security in case you want to mobilize private funding. So quite complex, actually. I think transboundary projects are more related with the hydrological cycle as a whole. It will touch upon big aquifers or major water basins, and probably public finance will be more suitable for most part of it, right? There may be some components that can be financed by the private sector if the governments can agree on a certain structure that can secure long-term commitments in terms of cash flow and payment to the private sector, so that the risk can be taken. And so I think the participation of the private sector will be very limited and focus more on technological aspects or certain components of the infrastructure that may be relevant and where there can be some kind of agreement. Now, in terms of the first intervention, I think regarding since the beginning, regarding what are going to be the source, I mean, secure the source of funding since the very beginning of the project, because you can have a project list of huge billions of dollars, but then you will never find the funding. So all the money you will put into feasibility, etc., will be, unfortunately, probably lost, right? So I think maybe in that cases, you need from the very beginning to identify the sources of funding. There are maybe, and as they are more related, I think, to global water resources that we were discussing earlier with Aude, and probably main aspects of hydrological cycle and related to the movement of atmospheric rivers, and where really the source of water is generated, and then where it will fall and how it will impact into the major basins and major aquifers. Maybe some emissions of bonds, climate bonds or green bonds could be useful, where actually multilaterals or countries could subscribe, maybe some instruments that can be useful. They can be structured by commercial banks and subscribed by public pension funds or countries as a whole. Otherwise, I think private sector has a possibility to participate in very specific part of the infrastructure in transboundary projects.
Thank you very much, Naol. And I would like truly to thank the panelists for your time, your insight, your contribution. It's unfortunate that you will not be able to go to the second round. And for the meeting, really thank you also for staying with us, for your time. If there is any burning question, I would like to take two before we close the session. Thank you very much. So there's no question. I think the conversation has been quite straightforward. We hear about the importance of project prioritization, the role of river basin organization, the importance of WASH sustainability project, and of course, the role of private sector. It has been a privilege to facilitate the conversation and to stay with you until now. Thank you very much for your patience, and I wish you a peaceful evening. Bye.